that you all could join us for this webinar on rapid rehousing for homeless youth. I'm Mindy Mitchell. I'm a program and policy analyst here at the National Alliance to End Homelessness, and my focus is youth homelessness policy. So I'll be starting us off today with a really brief overview of rapid rehousing, and then we'll hear from Bill Mott-Savage, Executive Vice President of Programs at Valley Youth House in Pennsylvania, about how they make their great rapid rehousing program work for youth. During the presentations today, you can enter questions into the question box on the right of your screen, and my colleagues Sharon McDonald and Anna Blasco will join Bill and me for that discussion after the presentations. The webinar will also be recorded and made available on the Alliance's website. So thank you all for being here today to learn more about using rapid rehousing to serve homeless youth, and we'll go ahead and get started. So again, I'm just going to start us off with a quick overview of the core components of rapid rehousing. As many of you know, the core components of rapid rehousing were developed in collaboration with and are endorsed by the National Alliance to End Homelessness, the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. Rapid rehousing is designed to help individuals and families quickly exit homelessness and return to permanent housing. A key element of rapid rehousing is the Housing First philosophy, which offers housing without preconditions such as employment or income, lack of a criminal background, or sobriety. There are three core components of rapid rehousing: housing identification, rent and move-in assistance, and rapid rehousing case management and services. While a rapid rehousing program must have all three core components available, it is not required that any single entity provide all three of those services, nor that a household utilize them all. The first core component is housing identification. And at its most basic level, a rapid rehousing program helps individuals and families identify and secure housing. So programs do this by identifying units and recruiting landlords to rent to homeless households. It's important, of course, to match the households to appropriate housing, housing for which they will be able to pay the rent after financial assistance ends, and housing that is decent, and especially in the case of survivors of domestic violence, that is safe. The next core component of rapid rehousing is rent and move-in assistance, financial assistance. So the amount and duration of financial assistance will vary, and the key to this is providing the assistance that's necessary for households to move immediately out of homelessness and to stabilize in that permanent housing. Some common types of financial assistance used in rapid rehousing programs are for move-in costs, security deposits, rental payments, and utility assistance. And the final core component of rapid rehousing, and a really important core component for serving young people, as Bill will tell you, is case management and services. So these are provided both before and after a household moves into permanent housing. And the services are an essential component and must be guided by the unique needs and wants of individuals and families that are experiencing homelessness. One of the most important functions of rapid rehousing case management is to help households negotiate manageable lease agreements with landlords and to help households understand their rights and responsibilities as tenants. Another important function of rapid rehousing case management is to connect rapid rehousing clients to other community-based services that can support the clients once that assistance ends. Okay, so that covers the core components of rapid rehousing, and that'll get us grounded in the conversation we're about to have for serving homeless youth with this model. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill Mott-Savage to tell us more about how those core components look in action with young people at the Valley Youth House. Bill, take it away.
Thanks, Mindy. You can go on to the second slide there, please. All right. Hi, everybody. Today, I just want to give you a brief overview of what we're going to cover. I'm going to give you a brief history of our rapid rehousing program and some of the decision making and why we chose to go that direction, how it really fit in with some of the things we're already doing. Probably spend a good bit amount of time on the philosophy and approach. as I always say, you can plug in a lot of the nuts and bolts to fit your specific program within the funding guidelines, but I think the things that have helped us be successful have really centered around philosophy and approach. Hit briefly on some of the housing options for older youth and how rapid rehousing fits in. We'll go into the model and case flow, client education, which again is an important piece. Talk about this all the time. Sometimes the assumptions we make about what our young people know. For any of you, think back to when you were 18, 19 years old. How much did you actually know about managing a household? In my personal case, it was not a whole lot. Briefly, what makes it work? Again, some of the funding pieces, and then some of the challenges we've experienced through managing rapid rehousing. Next slide, please. Okay, real briefly on Valley Youth House, I won't hit all this stuff, but just give you a sense of our agency. We operate in 11 eastern PA counties, so basically Philadelphia, Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton areas. We're a moderate-sized agency, a little over 420, 430 staff. In a given year, we house over 400 transition-age youth and babies. And we've had a lot of experience with rapid rehousing, beginning with HPRP models, homelessness prevention or rapid rehousing. That was about, I believe, beginning back in 2009. And a similar model, which was something you may have heard of, a Kids for Cash scandal in Luzerne County, PA, which was basically a kickback scheme for judges illegally placing young people. Some of the settlement from that money was actually used to rapidly rehouse young people. Currently, we have 2 rapid rehousing projects, one in Philadelphia specific to LGBTQ youth, and in Montgomery County, PA, which is a suburban county right outside, butts up right to the city of Philadelphia. Next slide. So how did we get here? Why did we do it? About 12, 13 years ago, we were started managing a HUD supportive housing program model and we were having some really, really good success. Hopefully many of you in the audience are somewhat familiar with this model. There's a lot in common with how we've approached rapid rehousing. As I mentioned, then in 2009, HPRP came out, and we saw that as an opportunity to expand the number of youth we were serving. So we were successful in starting several HPRP programs. Again, as some of you may be aware, that was part of the stimulus package, so it was a one and done shot. But really, as we viewed it, HPRP morphed into ESG, Emergency Solution Grant, and other rapid rehousing models. So that was an opportunity for us to convert some of our previous HPR take models into rapid rehousing. And for us, it really came down to an opportunity to serve more young folks, and also from just being a part of different continuums of care, started to get the picture that this was a funding trend going forward. And if we continue to want to be able to serve large numbers of young people, this was one of our best options. Next slide, please. One of the things I'll hit here really quickly is a continuum of housing options. Won't go into so much of the things on the left end of that continuum. You can see on the left end of the continuum, I have more restrictive models. On the right end, I have least restrictive models with a dotted line to the real world. I have rapid rehousing fairly close to that dotted line. Through our work with a number of populations, including youth aging out of foster care, homeless youth, we noted that some of those traditional models, what would happen, you'd have these kids in these traditional models, either congregate, small group living. What you would see happen is, one, that young people would get really frustrated in that model. As soon as they had an opportunity to leave, they would leave and they would take that huge jump into the real world. And what we saw traditionally happen, particularly around foster care youth, again, a lot of crossover in those populations, we saw those kids crash and burn and do really, really horribly. So years ago, we started shifting our model to that least restrictive end of the continuum. And actually, in this particular model, I could probably slide rapid rehousing a little bit further to the right, actually, towards that real world. With the idea being, assist the young people into getting into a setting that's really just a small step from living independently. Some of the philosophical keys, they're pretty obvious. Freedom and responsibility, we want to be on the high end of those two things. Along with that, I didn't throw this in here, but I also say age-appropriate freedom fits, well, I have freedom, but age-appropriate freedom. So keeping in mind that while our youth may have gone through a number of significant challenges, they're going to have an interest in engaging in a lot of activities that are, quote, normal for 18 to 24-year-olds, whatever normal may be. Learning, our bias is that young people learn best from experiential opportunities. Think of this yourself. I always give the example, if your mom was teaching you about banking and how to manage a bank account, she didn't take out a module, say turn to page 37, we're going to learn about banking today. She took you down to the bank, she helped you open an account, you overdrew your account once or twice, she helped you fix your mistakes. These days she'd probably help you look at your online banking, see where you're spending your money, those type of things. Behavioral opportunities. I refer to these as both the funky and positive stuff you can get into in a particular community or environment. So that's things like drugs, alcohol, hanging out with the wrong people, managing your family relationships, your biological family relationships. And again, our approach has been provide opportunities and allow opportunities for, not saying drug use and things like that, we're not encouraging that, but knowing that those youth have to learn how to manage those opportunities, make good decisions, and the best way to do that is be in a setting where they have some positive adult folks and case managers helping them follow up and make good decisions. If they make mistakes, learn how to clean it up. Control, helping people develop internal control versus external. Viewing mistakes as opportunities. If any folks in the audience were ever 20 years old, you know that you're going to do some not so smart things. But again, our bias is that is how young people learn, by making some mistakes. Our job is to help them clean up those mistakes, make better choices going forward. Decisions of planning, obviously youth driven, so whatever the plan is within reason, it should be the youth plan. And then finally, a big one for us is natural versus artificial or program consequences. The way I explain this to people is, and to my staff, is trying to get out of the focus on, well, this is a Valley Youth House rule. Rather, there's a focus on community norms and community standards and community rules. So if you live in a certain neighborhood, you know, you may not be able to be particularly loud after 10 or 11 o'clock. Other neighborhoods, not going to be so noticed. In some neighborhoods, or hopefully in most neighborhoods, you should pick up your trash well, things like that. You probably shouldn't have loud visitors coming and going late at night, those sort of things. So we really try to focus not only the consequences, but also the behavior on what is the community norm, helping young people understand that, helping young people understand how to be a good neighbor as a big piece of this. How to interact with your landlord, a piece of this as well, which we'll get into in a little bit. Next slide, please. All right, model and case flow, and again, this could vary, but too far, Mindy, one back. Okay, here we go. Referral for us, multiple sources. Increasingly, both the counties we're working in are going to centralized intake. So we're getting some people right off the streets, we're getting people word of mouth, but we're also, particularly in suburban Philadelphia, we're dealing with centralized intake. So all coming through one starting point. The majority of those young people coming right out of shelters. We've also had a portion, I said the first two young people we had in our Montgomery County Rapid Rehousing Program were both young ladies that were living in their cars. So coming out of pretty difficult situations. Our screening and assessment is really focused on screening people in. In the last year, we served, I believe it was 52 young people in these programs. To my recollection, we only had one that we screened out, and really it was for a serious safety concern, really recent, very dangerous criminal behavior that we decided it was not in the youth's best interest to be in that setting or potentially the community. We used to do something more. This is where we're changing our philosophy. Back in our SHP days and our early HPRP days, where we were really doing conditional acceptance and then having young people jump through hoops. So it was the drug test, it was getting re-enrolled in school and things like that. We've moved away from that, and I will say we're not quite completed that housing first, but we're pretty close. No more drug screenings on the front end. And as I said, no more than 1 or 2 young people not accepted in the last year. We then do an initial 30-day plan. Primary point of this is to get everybody on the same page, help the youth understand our expectations. Don't confuse expectations with not accepting them, but I think I'd say like what a lot of good parents do, which is set the expectations high, knowing that they're of course not going to meet every single one of those perfectly. Client contract, very similar. We outlined both our responsibilities and the youth's responsibilities. We then do an individualized apartment search, so that involves pounding the pavement with a young person, talking to landlords, looking for a unit that is close to that particular youth's school, employer, social supports, whatever it may be, public transportation, obviously a big one. And then moving on to the landlord negotiation and lease execution. A lot of folks ask me about finding landlords. I would say for us, we're in a lot of communities, and I will say the first maybe 2 years until you build that landlord base is a little bit more challenging. After you begin to build relationships with the landlords, it's really not been a particularly large challenge for us. Talking with people from different parts of the country, our fair market values, well, I don't think they're affordable, seem to be more so than, New York City, obviously, or like certain West Coast areas. So I'd say like the landlords is kind of related, but the landlords that we're working with, the most important thing they're looking for are they're going to get paid, and they're going to get paid on time, and as long as that young person's involved in their program, that's going to happen. We explain that in the front end. We also have some packets that we've created to market this to landlords and explain what our responsibilities are, what the youth's responsibilities are. And I think the other thing that's appealing to the landlords is we do commit to helping them negotiate issues and being an intermediary with the youth if there are problems. So the lease is obviously in the youth's name. We don't have the power to evict the youth, anything like that, but we have a pretty good history of negotiating and working out those problem areas, and again, helping that young person understand that these are community standards versus VUH rules, and if you're going to live in a community, you have to abide by that. Again, that being stated, once in a while you do get into some unrealistic landlords, and helping the young people manage that as well. Next slide, please. Moving assistance, so providing that security deposit, that rent, obviously. We've also been able to do a little bit of furnishing, as I gave the example of the first couple of young ladies that came in that were living in their cars. We minimally try to get them a bed. Funding, we'll get to this at the end, is a little challenging in this from time to time, particularly finding that supportive service funding. The case management and the stuff funding is the challenge, I think, for us from time to time. We've also developed some relationships. We're working on some with community partners, working on some adopted apartment type approaches. We have some small grants that help provide some of those other pieces, because often our young people are coming to us with the clothes in their back, a few items, and that's about it. I already mentioned that we do an initial 30-day plan. We then do a longer-term plan, a 3 to 6 month plan, which we update regularly. And this, I think, is a huge key, intensive case management. I say this all the time. If you put me in my own apartment when I was 19 years old and weren't providing me with a lot of support, direction, guidance, and oversight, I would have done strange things. That's just me. Some of you out there, I'm guessing the same perhaps. So we try to keep that at 8 to 1 or less ratio. Sometimes with funding it gets up a little bit higher, but our goal has consistently been to keep it that low. What that means is we're doing one-on-ones every week at every house, if possible. Occasionally schedules don't match up, that type of thing. And then we also shoot for doing a second community-based contact. That can be a real short one. Maybe we just stop by the young person's work in a way that doesn't embarrass them or tell him or her who we are, that type of thing. Check in them if they're attending school, community college, whatever it may be, meet them when they have a break, those sort of things. And I will say also that the in-home, again, while youth in this program don't have to participate in services, we find that it is really important that even if they're not participating in services at a very high level, they're allowing us in to make sure things are safe, that they haven't taken stray people or animals, those type of things. And again, if they have done those things, it's not an automatic out, it's a discussion. Typical assistance is 12 months. I know in one of Mindy's slides she talked about generally 6 months. We've tried some shorter terms. Initially with HPRP, with our LGBTQ population in Philly, we tried a really short term. We tried first months, last months, and 3 months rental assistance, and we found almost none of the young people were able to transition in that period of time. Again, other folks may have a different experience, and I'm sure there is exceptions, but for us it's been closer in that 9 to 12 month range for most of our young people, and then discharge based on client readiness. So if we do have somebody that just needs the few months, we will do that. I can say, I have to check with my program managers, but there's probably been no more than a handful over the last year that have done it in less than that 6 month time frame. Next slide. Okay, client education, this is a real important one. I mentioned that, and this is not downgrading or dissing our kids, or young people, I should say. But again, think of college students. How much do they know about this stuff at the age of 18, 19, 20, 21 years old? Apartment hunting, maybe a little bit, credit and credit scores, roommate searches. This is a big one. We've tried to do some matching. We've also worked on some matching as a youth is exiting, so potentially staying at that same apartment, transition place, but that's challenging. It's a one bedroom, but looking for potential roommate matches. And youth thinking that they have a good friend they're going to move in with, but they haven't worked out all the things like whose name is the utilities in, how are we going to manage our food bills, how do you feel about your friend having their girlfriend over constantly or staying overnight all the time, those sort of things. So we discuss those questions with them and at times with their potential roommate. Renters' rights, an important one. Again, sometimes you'll have landlords, obviously, that are trying to take advantage of the situation, not fixing things, etc. Apartment maintenance repair, I think this is not a funny one, but again, being surprised, or don't be surprised that they won't know, some of them won't know when the toilet's overflowing that there's a shut-off valve right behind the toilet, and that will prevent damage to your apartment and your stuff. Or knowing what a fuse box is and how to reset a fuse. All this really basic, or what adults may think is basic stuff for homeowners. I already mentioned being a good neighbor is huge. We'll prompt people on, if you have an 80-year-old lady living in the apartment next to you, she's probably going to not like your music blasting late at night. But what else can you do? Can we help you get headphones? Simple things like that. Or do you have headphones? Helping them say no. This is also a big one. To friends. Sometimes friends find out that they have a place of their own. They want that to be party central. Not a great idea. That's going to create a neighborhood issue for you. So giving them sometimes role playing around that of how they're going to actually say it. That's particularly even more hard when it's a family member. And in some cases, we've worked to see if there was some other way we could provide assistance to a family member. Reading a lease, of course. Also ending a lease. How do you get out of an apartment? No, you just can't leave whenever. Let's look at the terms of your lease. Doing that on the front end, understanding that the commitment they're making on both ends to this. Financial management, additionally a huge one. One of the things we do again, the youth have to agree to this, but let us view their online banking statements. And then again, you're not in trouble, but it's talking about, okay, you're having trouble paying your electric bill, but you had fast food 5 times this week. How can we rework this? How can you rework this so that your money is actually lasting until the end of the month? Everything else, I always tell my counselors, you're a jack of all trades. They're going to talk to you about relationship issues with peers, girlfriends, boyfriends. They're going to talk to you about issues with their bio family, which is often huge. Oftentimes these young people have been kicked out, but they still have a relationship with their bio family. So oftentimes the informal counseling or more formal counseling around understanding what are mom or dad's or family's limitations. A simple example I've said to youth a million times is, mom's always going to be mom, but maybe you just can't live with her. But what do you feel comfortable with? What does she feel comfortable with? Can you stay there on holidays? Can you call her if you have an emergency? Or is she somebody that is always asking you for money and you have to figure out a way that you're going to be able to set limits with her, those type of things. Next slide, please. Already hit some of this stuff. What makes it work? Philosophy. Some of that philosophy and approach stuff in all our programs, I find that's the biggest key, quite honestly, along with the next one. Maybe they're all important. Let's see. Relationship-based. Look for counselors that can engage young people. If you don't have staff that can engage, it's not going to work. They're already going to try to ditch you from time to time. If you don't have staff that can engage and relate to the youth in the program, it is not going to work. Understanding of adolescent development. Simple example, think of what you thought you knew at 18 versus what you really did. Again, if there's anybody 18 out there, I'm not dissing you. We all know that the brain doesn't fully develop to mid-20s. So we have to work within that context. Flexible thinking, I find this is a big coaching piece for our staff as well, which is oftentimes, and I'm not talking about Shades of Grey, the dirty book, anything like that, but people often are looking, counselors in particular, for the perfect answer. If A, or the same answer. If a client does A, then we always do B. And what I always say to folks is think about your own, how parents raise their kids. You may have multiple kids and you don't treat them all the same. If you have siblings, think about the same thing, how parents didn't always treat you exactly alike. The goal is to work with the young people in a way that's going to work for them. So in my mind, in our approach, it's if A, then is the answer B, C, D, E, whatever it is that's going to help the youth get it right and make it work. Sufficient case management mentioned. Random check-ins, this is something we've done on and off at different times. We called it Midnight Madness in Philly. We also, for safety reasons, then tried some early morning stuff. And basically what it was, we let young people know is we could stop by really at any time. It was not trying to be overly intrusive. We would knock, actually, in this particular program we don't have keys, excuse me, so they don't have to let us in, but we would come by, check on them late night, early morning, just to make sure that nothing real crazy was going on, that there wasn't a lot of people staying over that shouldn't be, those sort of things. And again, it wasn't an out if someone was doing something they shouldn't be, but it was the beginning of a discussion. Life skills education and opportunities to practice. Obviously, in their own apartment, they're going to have opportunities to practice. One of our, we think both hard skills, cooking, cleaning, budgeting, banking, particularly budgeting, really important. But we also have a bias towards the soft skills, communication, decision making, anger management, delayed gratification, all those sort of things. They're harder to teach, but I always provide the example. Our young people are smart enough to integrate the hard skills. You can teach them how to bank and budget, but the lack of soft skills will get in the way of the implementation at times. So, young person has a job, they know how to budget their money, they get paid, they haven't integrated the concept of delayed gratification or setting priorities, so they get a cell phone, a tattoo, and give their mom 20 bucks and they're broke. So helping them work through those type of things. Other supportive services, a big challenge related to our budget at times, but food, transportation, so finding a way, we've been able to find a way to fund some trans passes, things like that, startup furnishings, particularly the bed and a few basics. And a big one for us, again, I've kind of beaten a dead horse here, but who you hire and why. What I would say is the 4 things I'm looking for in a counselor in this program is, 1, they're able to engage young people, 2, they have a good work ethic, 3, they're intelligent, and I don't remember what my 4th one was because I didn't make really good notes. Flexible, I've already mentioned that, but they're flexible in their thinking and so forth. Next slide, please. Other things that make it work, access to quality clinical services. If you can find a way to integrate some clinical services, particularly within your team, so that your clinical person is talking to your case manager, and they're all talking to the youth, that has been particularly helpful. We've had some success over different periods of time integrating some clinical time directly from our staff. If not, we've accessed it in the community. Connect with permanency resources, whether that's their bio family, whether it's other people, whether it's church groups. Everybody needs somebody. In line with rapid rehousing philosophy, lightest touch, so giving people what they need. This was a shift for us again from our previous supportive housing model, where it was like, that's a maximum 2-year program. At one point, almost everybody in the program was getting 2 years. I will say, and this is not being cruel, but in some cases, not too much stuff, but more than they needed. And really looking at this as being a more, honestly, money-efficient approach at times. Our costs are significantly less. I was trying to run some quick math here. We're probably a little bit under $5,000 a youth a year in this program versus in excess of 12 or 15 in our SHP, depending on where that happens. Obviously, track your outcomes. Another big one, know they will mess up, make it difficult to get thrown out. Think of the range of normal, whatever that is, adolescent or older adolescent behavior. So sometimes they're going to drink, sometimes they're going to smoke a joint, sometimes they're going to sneak or have their girlfriend or boyfriend over when they're not supposed to. They're going to get a cat, not all of them, but some of them. And those are not things that we're going to be kicking people out for. We're going to be having a discussion. We're going to be trying to help them problem solve. We're going to refer back to their lease. We're going to refer back to community norms, all those things. Incentives, when we have them, we do trans passes, sometimes we do gift cards, food cards, other donation stuff. I already mentioned natural behavioral expectations and consequences. We do a lot of transition in place, so a goal for many of our youth is to stay in that place, in that particular apartment, take over the rent completely within that year term. In other cases, though, other options may be we have had young people transition to a college dorm, a roommate, other situations. Avoid drift. What I'm talking about here is, again, among the staff. I'm beating the staff piece to death, but you're no stronger than your staff, obviously. I think, or our experience has been that particularly when there's behavioral issues, staff have a tendency, or many staff have a tendency to become more restrictive, controlling, get in power struggles with the young people, as opposed to being solution-based. Kind of call it in some cases like defaulting to their norm and their, it's not always, but oftentimes a more restrictive style. In our larger areas, we've been able to provide some alumni opportunities. We really do open-ended aftercare. I've been at Valley for 20 years. I have 35-year-old people coming back to see me from time to time. That was before rapid rehousing, but same deal. And last one on this page, this is an important one. This, again, goes to the not assuming they know how to do certain things. And sometimes they'll surprise you and we'll know how to do it. But I tell my staff all the time, I'll hear people say, well, it's supposed to be an independent living program. I'm like, no, if it was completely independent living, we wouldn't need you. So the approach we take is do it with them. Maybe that's one time. Sometimes it's 10 times. Do it with them. That means if it's riding a bus to get somewhere, that means opening the bank account. That means cooking a meal. Do it with them, with them, with them. Then it's watch that they know how to do it. And then down the road, it can be confirmed that it actually happened, figuring out what approach you can use to confirm it actually happened. So again, I'll have staff that'll say to me, well, so-and-so hasn't been meeting with me. I'm like, well, how do you think they're doing? Well, as far as I can tell, they're still working and they're not having any difficulties with their landlord, and they're going to school, for example. I'm like, okay, then what I want to know is tell me how you're going to confirm that. If they're doing all those things, then that is spectacular, and maybe we're really close to getting to the point of discharging them. Maybe we can step down the case management role for that particular person, free up some of your time around other young people. Next slide. All right, funding tips. Honestly, this is what we did. About a year and a half before we got any funding in one of the counties, and it was initially HPRP, but transition over to rapid rehousing. For about a year and a half, I showed up at our continuum of care, had conversations with people, really just built awareness of the issue. We've also done a lot around youth self-advocacy. I was at a National Alliance meeting the other week, and I do think an important piece of this is, and we did follow this, is it wasn't only youth telling their stories, it really was the youth making recommendations around what is needed, and I think that was one of our most powerful sources and effective sources of the youth stating to people and decision makers what they needed. Community awareness, seek allies, diversify funding. With our ESGs, rapid rehousing, they're one-to-one match. That's been a challenge for us. We've been able to pick that up from some local county match in suburban Philly out of Affordable Housing Trust Fund money. But you're going to need other funds. You're going to need the funds for stuff. So even if it's a number of those small grants to supplement, that's been particularly helpful for us. Next slide. Funding trends, again, that was one of the reasons we looked at rapid rehousing. It also felt fit with our mission, and we had experienced success with it under HPRP, so it really made a lot of sense. Just at the bottom there, I'll mention a good example for us, corporate donations. We have an example with one of the local Bed Bath & Beyond donates all their returns for us. A lot of the returns are in perfect condition. It was like the wrong color, whatever it may be. Every week we basically pick up a truckload of stuff from Bed Bath & Beyond. Mostly it's accoutrements and things like that, but towels, dishes, bath supplies, all that kind of stuff has been particularly helpful. Next slide. I think I might be almost done. Oh, challenges, I'm not almost done. We have inflexible copay in some jurisdictions. For example, one of them requires 30% copay from the youth. And in some cases, I would have preferred to do, hey, first few months, let's get you out of debt, and then let's start your copay. we don't have as much flexibility as we would like in some of those cases. Shelter options, while we're pretty much out of the conditional acceptance. I need to cross out of this slide. But during the housing search, which is going to take some time, what do we do with people? We have had some success. Generally, if folks know, or I'd say more often than not generally, more often than not, if folks know that, hey, there's a program working with them, they're going to be out of here in a couple of weeks, we can usually work that out. Again, not every case. Funding the supportive services, I already mentioned that. For us, we found there to be, and this was particularly in the beginning, the grant requirements were a little bit different than what we were used to, and there were lots of meeting and administrative time on it, which you're not necessarily getting compensated back for. Now, I think some of the meeting time really has been associated with, as one of the COC partners, with the fact that the COCs are going to centralized intake more and more. We were much more involved in those processes, so we got input on the front end, but there was also a lot of time on the front end. My guess is that may settle down a little bit now as this gets rolling a little more, both rapid rehousing and centralized intake. Next, please. Affordable housing, I mentioned that, not as bad as some places. Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, I believe our fair market value for a one-bedroom is around, fair market rent is around $950, give or take a few bucks. And again, that is, even if it's not as high as some places, it's a lot for, you know, that 20-year-old, even if working a 40-hour lower paying job. At one point, the third point there, small grants, at one point in one of our locations, as this was getting rolling, we had 3 small ESG grants providing rapid rehousing at one location. That was challenging to manage and track. We've had some success in consolidating it a bit, down to actually at the moment like 1.5 in that jurisdiction. Spend down challenges, so we got the money, and then as we're running through the year, our COC managers, community business development, or community and economic development say, well, why haven't you spent all the money? It's challenging when on day one of your grant you might not have any kids in. And this has been an interesting one. We found, compared to our SHP youth, these youth are in more, I'd say, needy or desperate situations. So our SHP youth, we had maybe more, I'd say we had more youth that were facing eviction. We had more youth that were doubled up and getting kicked out. Now we've got young people that are coming from cars, coming from shelters, but we found that our outcomes have not been substantially different from our SHP youth, who we were giving a lot more stuff to, if that makes any sense. And that was very informative for us. One of the things I'll say is I've actually found that the rapid rehousing approach has informed the approach to some of our other programs, where we're taking a harder look at, all right, we need to get rid of some of these hoops that we're having people jump through on the front end. We need to focus more on housing first. We need to think about providing a lower level assistance for folks that are capable of managing that lower level assistance. So it's been very eye-opening for us in the last few years. And I believe now we're at last slide. We'll see if I remember. Okay, so here are the numbers. Not a huge program this year. 52 youth, 5 babies housed. We had 29 youth exit. All but 1 exited to stable housing. 3/4 were employed at exit, and 83% graduated, 3% enrolled, 14% dropped out. I will say, and anybody can see this, but to be honest with our data, we're in the process of working on our next step, which is where are they now, or not now, where are they a year later, and we're working that. So hopefully if I'm ever asked to do one of these again, I'll be able to tell you where our young people are a year down the road. I also do know that this exists, should be able to find it in some of the HUD database. I could put some of my stuff on that as well. I think I hopefully stuck pretty close to my time frame. Mindy, are you there? I'm a little bit over maybe. That's a lot of talking.
No, that was great. I could listen to you talk about your program all day. Thank you so much, Bill. So I know many of you listening on the webinar have developed similar innovative programs with rapid rehousing, kind of along the same pathway that Valley Youth House took as a result of HPRP. So we at the Alliance would love for you to share the tools that you've developed so that we can share those with other communities. You can do that on our website. And Bill, I want to get all this stuff from you too.
Sure.
And so now we'll start the question and answer portion of the webinar. Remember, you can enter questions in the question box on the right of the screen. And we have joining us for this our Families and Youth Director, Sharon McDonald, and our Technical Assistance Specialist, Anna Blasco, who may be able to answer some of the questions. So we'll get started. One of the questions that a lot of people had, Bill, was, and this is, you and I have talked about this before actually, the concern with rapid rehousing or with doing housing first in general for young people is when you're engaging young people in services but they're not mandatory. Can you talk more about the challenges that you guys have had, how you kind of switched to that approach, what you find works for that?
Sure.
So when services are voluntary, what does that look like with young people?
Well, and for us, I have to say, on the front end, particularly when people are in a shelter or in their car, they're very willing to work with you. So that's been our experience. Is, they identify us. These are the people that are going to help me get an apartment. So on the front end, it's really not been an issue. What we have seen is after they get in and settled, like, yay, I'm in my apartment, I'm comfortable, woohoo. We haven't, to my recollection, had many, if any, you say, I'm not participating in services. What there tends to be is more of a ditch and hunt aspect, or not even ditch, but, canceling appointments last minute and things like that. And less directly, much less directly than I'm not going to participate in services. And a lot of what we've done is focused on, we do a lot of drive-bys, but we also do, we've coached the staff a lot in persistence around rescheduling, and also sometimes not letting the kid off the hook. So for example, this is the simplest way to say it. I'll have a young counselor, 22, 23, the young person calls and says, I can't make it, and either doesn't provide an excuse or really provides a lame excuse. And the counselor has been coached to move from a more passive position to really emphasizing the importance of that appointment and the focus on what we're going to help you get done today. So going back to that, it's your plan, if that makes any sense. I hope that makes some sense. But going back to it's your plan, let's help you get it done, and not letting them off the hook easily when they try to cancel. The other thing we have run into is a few young people that, this was where I went to that with watch and confirm thing, that have gotten really busy, like a young mom with 2 kids in school working part-time. She really legitimately doesn't have much time. So we honestly just renegotiated that with her to be like, you just need to give us a few minutes a week so we confirm that everything's going okay. Particularly with your finances, that you're actually doing these things that you say you're doing. And I will say it's not perfect, but it hasn't been. It's been very limited. They say I won't participate in services, and I think part of that just might be the shelter piece. There's probably been also not probably. There's been 1 or 2 that have said I don't want to participate in services anymore, but they've also said like I'm good and I don't need help. And that's been a few of the young people that have discharged early but successfully. So did I answer that question, Mindy?
Yes, that was great. And another, this is always an issue too for people that are working on rapid rehousing programs, is the landlord engagement piece. So can you talk more about how you guys build trust with your landlords, particularly with young people, because many of them have never had leases.
Yep.
So do you guys ever do like a co-sign on a lease or something like that, or do landlords ever ask for other kinds of concessions in exchange for working with young people?
Sometimes landlords will ask for anything, but we generally won't do anything. I mean, a couple things we do is, one, the youth's going to be with us in that hunt, right? So we'll do work on the front end in prepping the youth in appropriate apartment search behavior. So it's similar to like when you do job interview prep with people. How do you dress? How do you carry yourself? Write down your questions in advance. All those sort of things so that they're presenting, hopefully reasonably well. As far as the discussions with the landlords, I mentioned this, is we're looking at moderate level landlords who are interested, and we do HUD-based inspections so that the places have to be up to certain standards. But they're most interested in getting paid, and we let them know that two things: that we will pay them while the youth is in the program, and in cases where we've had a youth blow out early, and this is, I'm going from the history of like our SHP and our other HPRP and all my other programs, is we will take care of that landlord. Again, not forever, but we might do that last month's rent, or we'll allow them to keep the security. The other piece is we let them know that we'll negotiate if they have behavioral issues with the tenant. While we can't evict that youth, we will have conversations. We'll try to be an intermediary. We will help out. I said this during my presentation. I would say, particularly like in the larger community, the rental pool and the vacancy rate is high enough. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it's high enough in Philadelphia that we can find places. Same in Montgomery County, same in a lot of our suburbs. But I will say the first probably 2 years till you start building up a base of landlords is the more challenging end. At that point, then you'll find people that will, this happens regularly in some of our jurisdictions, where they'll be calling us, landlords are calling us to say, hey, I have an apartment available. But that really develops over, in our experience, a few years' time. Again, I think if you're in those low vacancy areas, it's going to be a different story for you. Even though I'm thinking of, like, we got into a new, not on an HPR or not on a rapid rehousing, but we got into a new market recently, and it was like, at least as a starting point, we found a complex that really likes us. Now, we can't have all our youth there because it doesn't work for all of them in the location. But it just takes time, and I'd say it also takes maybe a little different skill level or a different type of skill that some of the counselors might have, and that's where some of the supervisor comes in to kind of sell the program a little bit, and that's been helpful as well. Some of our more experienced people are helping with that part. So,
okay. So a follow-up question about that. One of the things that I wondered about, some programs have a person who's their only job in the program is just the landlord engagement housing finding. Do you guys, is it the case managers that's doing that, or the supervisors, or is there just one person?
It's primarily the case managers, but the supervisor will often assist. The other thing I forgot to mention with centralized intake now really rolling in Montgomery County, they do have something called housing resource centers, and the housing resource centers within the county are doing a lot of work on marketing and identifying landlords that will rent to our populations, to any of the COC-related populations. So that's been really helpful as well. Although in that particular county we've been around for a while, but sometimes finding the more affordable end, that's been particularly helpful. So that has been a big one as well. So we're getting, in some cases now, this has been new over the last maybe year and a half, we're getting a lot of leads from this external source. But I mean, I could see the model with one person specializing really working, but that could definitely work. But the other piece is that, like, that landlord, like I said, they would develop a relationship with that one key person. I have, on a given night, almost 300 youth living somewhere with us. So I guess I'd need more than one. But anyway, I could see how that would work as well.
Okay, great. Another question is, can you talk more about the particular program that's focused on LGBT youth? What prompted that decision, and how is that particular program working?
Sure. What prompted that? We've been in Philadelphia for a number of years. We work with we have the contract to work with the young people aging out of foster care in Philadelphia. So we noticed some obviously overlap between the homeless population and the former foster care population. We had also done a little bit of supportive housing work. So we were seeing a large number of LGBTQ youth approaching us with housing issues in Philadelphia. We initially went after a HPRP grant specifically for GLBT youth in Philly. I would say, and off the top of my head, I can't quote the risk figures, but we know that they're higher risk of family rejection, being thrown out, higher risk of sexual or physical abuse, higher, I think the risk of suicide is significantly higher as well. So it was really just, again, in fitting with our mission that we applied for that grant particular to the population, then moved it into an ESG grant, and then combined it with some foundation funding to keep it rolling even when the ESG money got short. I think one of the things that I know you mentioned early on, Mindy, was the connection to other community resources. We developed some good partnerships with some non-residential GLBTQ resources for youth in the city, the Attic, the Mazzoni Center, that had access to those populations already, and were really initially some of our largest referrals, continue to be some of our largest referral sources for those programs. So other than, I'd say, like, we've had real stability. We've had one case manager since 2009 in that program who really knows the ins and outs of LGBTQ services in the city, and that's been a great blessing to have someone so experienced to be able to connect the young people with other services.
Okay, great. And here's an important question for thinking about when you talk about switching models to potentially doing rapid rehousing. Mm-hmm. So rapid rehousing for youth does sound a lot like a scattered site transitional housing model, right? So what is the difference for you guys? And do you have more than one of the young people in your programs in a particular unit? If so, do they have separate leases, expectations, things like that? How is this different from what a lot of youth providers have been doing as transition in place?
Well, I guess you'd say for us, it's not, I don't want to get this question or this answer wrong. It's not a whole lot different other than the time frame has been the biggest thing for us. Honestly, the time frame. So we've experimented with roommate pairs before. We've had couples before. One of our grants now includes transition age youth with children specifically. If we had the leasing issue where we had a potential match, they would both be on the lease. We'd be helping them negotiate all, the utilities, the food, the visitation, the things that oftentimes many 22-year-olds out there who are sharing an apartment haven't done on the front end and they get into roommate arguments about. We do negotiate those things with them and help them manage those. Those are still going to crop up from time to time. It's just kind of normal age developmental and roommate related stuff. But honestly, the biggest piece for us has been the term of assistance and then the philosophical shift of, honestly, 6 years ago we were taking the cream of the eligible crop, probably more so, and letting our staff and the supervisors know that we can have different expectations for the program and for outcomes, knowing that we're dealing with a more initially needy population. So kind of when I say letting them off the hook and assuaging their fears, like, oh my God, this kid's got more issues than we usually take in. He's still probably smoking weed. He's still drinking. He's fill in the blank. But as I said, then we found that our outcomes, at least for this last year, I have to go back and look at previous years, have really been pretty close to where our SHP outcomes have been. So hopefully I answered that question. I started going on a tangent.
That's okay. Your tangents are great. A couple of nuts and bolts questions. Can you just talk a little bit more about the ages of the young people? I'm assuming you don't serve any under 18s because of leasing requirements. What's the maximum time frame, average time? And you said it's about $5,000 for youth. Does that cover just the rental assistance, or is that for the whole shebang, the case management and everything?
For the whole shebang. I was looking, this is off the top of my head, so if you guys want, I can get you closer figures. But basically I have about $250,000 in these two programs, and we served 52 people last year, so I'm giving you the whole shebang budget. Although I'm not throwing in there, I'm sorry, I'll restate, that's the HUD portion. And then, so it is more than that. I'll have to adjust that for you guys. That is the HUD portion, which comes out to about $4,800 a youth. Again, with my quick numbers as I was thinking about this as we were getting ready to meet or to speak. Age ranges, we're looking at 18 to 23 at entry. We're looking at a year term max. We are, what was 18 and 23. In Pennsylvania, under 18, not that we want to steer youth in the direction of the system. We have two things. We could either be looking at potentially foster care under 18. We also have 2 runaway and homeless youth funded shelters. So if you're under 18, we can get you on one of our non-system youth shelter beds and then work with that young person there for reunification of the family members or whatever it may be. So we have some options there. What else did I miss on the nuts and bolts, Mindy?
Just average length of stay?
It's 6 to 12, which really it's very close to 12. Most of them are taking the entire year.
And if a young person gets to the end of the year and is still not ready, are you guys flexible on that as well?
We've had a few of those cases where we've had to extend a month or two. Again, not just saying this because everybody says it, but discharge planning starts from the beginning. And we have had a couple of young people due to mental health issues that we're not going to transition to self-sufficiency. But we were having those conversations at honestly, at 3 months, like this young person's not going to be ready. And then we were trying to tap into some other housing programs. My supervisor could answer that one better. But I knew one young lady we were looking to honestly transfer her to permanent supportive housing, which is hard to find, but we started early enough, and I believe we were able to get her into that type of program.
Okay, great. And there have been some questions about the income and employment piece. Particularly, this is important in rapid rehousing because you want young people, all people receiving rapid rehousing, to be able to pay for their own place after the program is over. So how many, I know you had the slide about it, but just to go over again, how many young people are coming in with employment or income? And if they're coming in with no income, what do you guys do as part of your case management to get them to the point where they're able to support themselves when the program is done?
Well, really quickly, if they are not employed, we are looking as soon as possible to get them into connect them. We'll do individual job search with people. I'm actually trying to look at some stats while you're talking to me, just so you know. So I'm opening up another window on my computer here. We are, we'll do a job search with folks, but we'll also refer to the local CareerLink programs, who we have a pretty good connection with, particularly in the suburbs. And we've really, this is one of the things we've really expanded. We used to just focus totally on employment income, and we have been focusing much more on not just exclusively employment income, but also income from other resources as needed. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find you some stats on how many come in employed. I may not be able to get you that this moment. I may. You can ask me another question or ask me to expand on that one.
Okay, I do have another quick nuts and bolts question that I left off, and that's how you guys structure the rent subsidy. Is it gradually decreasing? Are they paying any portion of their income if they have any? What does that package look like?
In Montgomery County, and this was from our local jurisdiction or community and economic development people who really wanted to stretch the total pot of money, not just for youth, but they require a 30% match from day one of, I believe it's gross, non-adjusted. So, and you have to recalculate, I believe it's every time the income changes or every 3 months. So those young people are picking up a pretty significant portion right away. One of the things we're not doing because in that particular program, because they have to pick up 30%, is we're not increasing that with the goal of focusing on saving some additional money before you leave. So as opposed to paying a larger copay, saving funds. I believe, and again, I'm kind of giving the broad overview of all our programs. In Philly, I believe it's a sliding scale, but we've again tried to top it out at 30% because we'd like people to leave with some money in hand, sort of that whole nest egg concept. And I apologize, I'm not able at the moment, and I'm not answering questions well because I'm looking for statistics while I talk to you guys.
That's okay.
So I may stop that.
Okay. Here's a good question, and I think this is really important for doing this kind of work. And I was fortunate enough to be able to meet with some young people a couple weeks ago during our conference to hear about again, like you said, not their story, but what they want, what they need, what worked for them, what didn't work for them. So could you elaborate a little bit more on how the perspectives of the young people themselves have helped to improve your programs, and also maybe for working with funders as well, for enlightening them?
Sure. Well, and there's a little bit of a historical context that ties in. I'll try not to go on too much of a tangent, but back in '99, we started a youth advisory board for youth in Pennsylvania. We co-founded it with the Department of Public Welfare, a advisory board for youth aging out of foster care. Over time, we've engaged our other youth in that process. Now, there's a piece of it that's separated just for the foster youth, but we've engaged other youth in the same process where they do a lot of speaking and advocacy. Again, I mentioned that it's not limited to telling stories. It also includes their recommendations. Now, we've not been quite as formalized with the exclusively homeless population, but again, there's a lot of overlap there. So a lot of our foster youth can speak about their homeless experiences and recommendations around that. What was the second part of the question? So that's been helpful. As far as their perspective, from the planning stage, it's all about their plan. We have youth sit on our agency board. So they're providing input at that level. We have youth, when I mentioned about picking the right staff, we have youth who sit in on interviews to help select the staff. And I'd say universally, or close to, nothing's universal. Close to universally, they do a great job with that. With a little bit of prep, they ask appropriate questions, they give insightful responses, and they've been very helpful in us selecting our best staff. So those are some of the things we do. I think with funders, when, again, not in a way that is not exploitive and does not feel exploitive, you have to be sensitive to that, as we all know. But if they're interested, providing opportunities for the young people, again, to not just tell their stories, but to make recommendations, trying to put those recommendations into a concrete format. We also do a lot of work with them around self-advocacy as far as how to present your information in a balanced way. So, some of it's simple stuff, which is, so tell us what works, so tell us what didn't work, tell us why, all those sort of things. Asking them questions about who and what has actually been helpful in their experience, and we've used that to inform our approach. And to me, it's not rocket science. They'll tell you pretty easily what actually works for them. We've helped with the point-in-time counts. We've involved youth in the point-in-time counts. We co-sponsor the point-in-time count for youth in Philadelphia and coordinate it, and we have youth volunteers that assist with that. We have 2 street outreach programs. We have youth street outreach workers. So I'd like to think that positive youth development and youth input is really integrated throughout our agency and programs. I wasn't prepared for that question, so I just made up the answer, but that is what we do.
That's a great answer. Okay, we have another question here about preparing young people to transition off of the program. What are your 3 top challenges for making that transition?
Finances, and that's not just that they have an income, that's that they follow what we're counseling around that income. So finances, relationships, I know that's very broad, but probably romance, or romance might be the wrong word, romance and drama related to that. And sometimes, and again, not disparaging our youth, but the concept of, or the simply stated, looking for love in all the wrong places. So someone comes along, gives them a little bit of attention, and the plan sort of gets thrown off, and then you're trying to help them manage that. The extreme of that is, I've seen a lot more in the last couple of years. It seems like we have more young people involved in domestic violence situations, and trying to connect them with resources. But anybody that's familiar with that dynamic knows that that's usually not a one and done thing. Excuse me. So finances, relationships. I know there's so many. continuing employment, and again, I see that as probably more related to the soft skills. So you get the job, but you get into a conflict with your boss, you tell your boss off, you show up late, you get in a conflict with the supervisor. It's more often less about knowing how to do the job and more about those soft skill things related to employment. I mean, when I said before, I know whoever asked that question just asked for 3 things, but maybe I stated it wrong. Maybe it's the soft skills, because it's like the relationship issues that tend to throw them off of a lot of stuff, whether it be jobs or other things.
And then what is the approach that your case managers take when those issues present themselves?
And it's going to maybe sound cliche, but it's helping them work through it individually. It's not giving up. It's being persistent. And it's knowing and understanding that whatever it is, it's not going to get 100% better tomorrow. And helping the kids see that. One of the things I don't think I mentioned is the whole concept of like baseline, not just planning, but helping the youth see the little steps of progress, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
So it's, yeah, because I think sometimes the youth looking for a solution that day, the staff person's looking for a solution that day, and real life usually more often than not doesn't work that way. So it's working with them over a period of time. That's why, again, I think we found, I'm just going to go a quick aside, but this is why we found, I think sometimes that the 3 to 6 month time period wasn't really working for us. We also looked at our SHP, and what we saw happen was they'd come in, they'd do really well, and then like 3 to 6 months, it was really common that they'd take a nosedive around some of this stuff. And I actually think we might see a little, there's more pressure in a year, although a year still seems like a lot for an 18-year-old sometimes. But it's reminding them that it's not that long. Mm-hmm. I'll go by quick.
I think you might have talked a little bit more about this, but particularly for people who live in very high-cost rent areas, can rapid rehousing work with a roommate who's not the other roommate is not also one of the young people in the program?
We have done that on a few occasions, and it's been generally more often than not, it's been a partner who wouldn't qualify for the program, but I can think of one where it was like an older relative, and we have done that. And really the only challenge for us has been, then we do a lower level of assistance, because the plan is that the other person's going to pick up half the entire rent. And then really the issues, if any, have been what you would expect around roommate relationship stuff and expectation stuff, and having all those conversations, or as many of those conversations as you can anticipate on the front end. So again, whose name is the bill in? What about the food? Are there house rules? What are the expectations for people cleaning up after themselves? For everybody out there that ever had a roommate, think about the things you argued about, apply that to this program, and multiply by 2. That's the formula.
Okay.
Okay. The funding's not the issue. It's the normal stuff you're going to run into, and maybe more extreme than normal stuff you're going to run into around roommate relations and managing all that.
Okay, great. And we'll. I'll take one more question. We're getting towards the end of the time period. And this one is about funding sources. Can you just elaborate more about the different funding sources that you use to help pay the rent? What local dollars have you been using? I know you were talking about the ESG matching and all of that, but just kind of go a little bit more in depth about the different funding sources that you're accessing for these programs.
Sure. In one of the counties, the one-to-one match is provided by the county through their Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So that works really well for us, and that program is, the case management's funded. We generally use, I should back up for a second, we generally use the rapid rehousing money almost entirely for rent, security, that type of stuff. We use the match almost entirely for the supportive services. And then we plug in with some of the little, in Montgomery County, with some of the little foundation stuff. So the Bed Bath & Beyond thing, some deal my supervisor has with some company to get, or some nonprofit to get beds really cheap. And then we've tied in a few very small grants, which is a constant process because oftentimes they're a 5 or 10,000, but that gives you the little bit of flexibility you need for a relatively small program. In Philadelphia, we used the rapid rehousing, again, almost primarily or exclusively for rent, security, minimal utilities assistance as needed. And then we used, there was a little bit of, initially there was a little bit of picking up some of the case management. And then we used a decent-sized, a good-sized foundation grant to cover the supportive services, the vast majority of supportive services. In a big market like Philadelphia, then we also did several private fundraising events, which not all the money went to this particular project, but this is a relatively, it's a little over $100,000 a year in Philly, maybe 150. But we brought in over 100,000 from our fundraising events, just 2 events, and a good portion of that went to support this program as well, which is much easier to do in a large venue. We're also in some smaller and suburban areas, and you can't do a $100,000 fundraiser in a cornfield. Well, maybe you can. I just haven't been able to yet.
Some folks in Iowa might disagree with you on that.
I'm sure you are. Just so Iowa, if you're there, I live in a cornfield, so if you come up with anything, tell me how to do it.
Okay, great. All right, Bill, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. So last words of advice for someone that's either just starting a rapid rehousing for youth program or thinking about doing one or thinking about retooling their transitional programs into rapid rehousing? Yeah,
I mean, I would just say that simply stated, the model can work. It is not that different. Some of the intricacies, you know, are a little bit different, but we really did find that they could work and they could work well. I think the key is to figure out at least most of your funding on the front end. You know, if you can get that, if you nail down your one-to-one match and at least get the majority of your supportive services covered, particularly the case management, it can really work. That's all I got to say about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Sharon and Anna, who were quiet, but were helping me on the back end. And really, I could spend all day talking about rapid rehousing for youth. I think it's a really important topic, and I think it's a model that can work for young people. And as Bill talked about, it's also potentially much more cost-effective, so you can serve more young people with the same amount of money. And I hope that you all will continue this conversation back in your own communities. And look for more youth homelessness webinars, more rapid rehousing webinars here from the Alliance in the coming months. We'll be announcing those in our newsletters. And if any of you are doing rapid rehousing for youth programs and want to share with us how that is working for you, what your challenges are, what your successes are, you can contact Sharon or me or Anna here at the Alliance. And just as a reminder, we will be posting a recording of this webinar on the website, endhomelessness.org, in the next couple of days. So thanks everyone for listening in today and for all the vital work that you do for people experiencing homelessness in your communities. Have a great week.
Thanks everybody. I hope that was helpful.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.